I'm about 90 drafts deep on Underdog for the 2025 fantasy football season, and I can tell you for a fact, there's a lot of clueless drafters out there that are totally overlooking some huge breakout potential at the running back position. So we're going to go through those guys today. Just make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So I want to start out with our first two guys right here and get them out of the gate. Tyjae Spears and Tracy Jr., I think, have really big breakout potential and are being completely overlooked right now in fantasy football drafts. So essentially, if you paid attention a couple weeks ago, I dropped my unsuspecting league-winning running backs video where I went through essentially the running backs that have league-winning potential that you would never suspect. Guys like Kyren Williams from a couple years ago, Raheem Mostert from a couple years ago, Josh Jacobs back from 2022. That's what the research is kind of based on. And Tyjae Spears and Tracy Jr. also made that list of potential league-winning running backs as well. So this is kind of a continuation of that video right here. And I want to briefly summarize that video if you did not see it. So what essentially I went through was what kind of was the commonalities there between guys like Kyren Williams, Josh Jacobs that one season, Travis Etienne in 2023, Raheem Mostert in 2023, a lot of those guys that were really low draft picks and ended up being complete values for your team. And the one thing that I found connected all of those types of guys was if you split them up from weeks 1 through 9 to weeks 10 through 18, you saw a drastic difference in their production from a fantasy football perspective. Their volume went up, their efficiency went up, everything went up. And from a total yards per game perspective, they became more dominant players at the back half of the season than they were in the front half of the season. And then also what you saw is that a lot of those running backs, they had rookies in their running back room as well. So if you take a look at who's on the screen right now, essentially what I did was I included 2024's predicted breakout running backs, and I also included 2025's predicted breakout running backs that year. And one of the guys on there that I was very high on was Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard was my big guy in 2024, and a lot of you know that. For whoever followed me during the offseason, you knew that Chuba Hubbard was one of my most drafted players by far in 2024 fantasy football because he fit this criteria right here, and of course it ended up paying really, really big. Now this research right here is actually different from the breakout running back research that I have done over the last 10 years or so. So the first thing that I want to identify with a breakout running back is what is a breakout, right? A lot of people will come on here and just throw the word breakout around to any running back that they can think of, right? Well, there's a lot of qualifiers that need to actually be addressed before you could just start calling Bijan Robinson a breakout running back. Obviously, he is not. So in terms of qualifiers here, there's a couple different ones that I'm looking for. You need to play at least 10 games in fantasy football. The year that you were considered a breakout running back, right? You need to not miss like half the season or something like that, because I'm trying to evaluate your fantasy points per game. And you essentially need to be a top 12 running back in terms of fantasy points per game. Now, the reason I prefer fantasy points per game over overall season-wise in fantasy and where you finish as a running back for the season is because of the fact that if you played 10 games, 11 games, 12 games, and you ended up being a 15.7 fantasy point per game guy, you may not have been a top 12 running back finisher that year. But that doesn't mean that you weren't on the way and on your path to being a breakout running back. That's why I prefer fantasy points per game studies over total fantasy season studies when it comes to finding fantasy football breakout running backs. And then the last thing I'm looking for is you need to be at least 10 spots higher of a finish than your previous year in fantasy football. So again, Bijan Robinson was not a breakout running back last year because the year prior he was a top 12 back. So in order for him to be a breakout, he would have had to finish as the running back number one, which of course he did not do. That was Saquon Barkley. But again, Saquon Barkley was not a breakout running back either. So you can see the full list of guys that I've been tracking since 2014 that were breakout running backs. It's an enormous list right here. We're obviously not going to go through every single one of these guys. But the one thing that I wanted you to note here is that Chuba Hubbard was obviously last year's lone breakout running back from a fantasy points per game perspective. Chase Brown did finish as a top 12 running back in fantasy, but he did not finish as a top 12 back in fantasy points per game. So I guess you could qualify him if you wanted to qualify a guy who finishes as a top 12 guy. I obviously think that Chase Brown was a great pick last year, but Chuba Hubbard was, by all definitions of this breakout qualifier, a breakout running back in 2024. And the other thing that I wanted to take away from this, because it was very striking, was the average age of a breakout running back was 23.6 years of age. So essentially what that means here is that you're not going to get a running back most of the time who's going to break out at Raheem Mostert's age that he broke out, and we'll go through that here in a little bit. The majority of these guys, if they're coming in at 21 years old, they're going to be breaking out by their third or fourth season in the NFL. So we're wanting to target running backs that are currently on their rookie deals and are currently guys that have lots of ground left to cover in front of them. So again, we can kind of see the condensed age list right here. And all I did here was I brought in guys that broke out at the age of 24 or just after the age of 24. And you can see it's a completely small percentage of these guys. 25.6% of them broke out after the age of 24. Again, it's very unlikely. Raheem Mostert breaking out at the age of 31 is ridiculous. That's unheard of. It will not probably be touched anytime soon. So we don't want to target a Raheem Mostert coming into his fifth NFL team. We don't want to do that with those types of guys. Justin Forsett, LeGarrette Blount, they did it at the age of 29. That's also two major outliers right there. Jamal Williams in Detroit a couple years ago did it at the age of 27. Huge breakout because of the scheme fit, and I think that was a huge reason why he did break out. James White, 26 years old. He was the only running back to do it at 26. And then we had five guys at the age of 25. Latavius Murray, David Johnson, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, and of course, last year Chuba Hubbard did it as well. Now, the reason I loved Chuba Hubbard last year was not obviously because of the age. That was the one knock that I had on him because he technically wasn't fitting the majority of breakouts at the running back position. But the reason I liked Chuba Hubbard was because there was a little something there called enormous opportunity. That's what he had on his side coming into 2024 that a lot of guys just did not. And then one of the other things that you'll also notice here that I want to point out, particularly with Tyjae Spears, and the reason I think he could be a big breakout this year is because if you look at all the guys who broke out after the age of 24, you'll notice here that one of these guys, only one of them, had multiple seasons as a top 12 running back in fantasy points per game and in fantasy football finishes, and that was Derrick Henry. All these other guys have been one-hit wonders as running backs in fantasy football. Latavius Murray, one-hit wonder for sure. David Johnson, definitely a one-hit wonder. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be a relevant back in fantasy football after the age of 25, but a lot of these guys are not going to maintain top 12 status in fantasy football because of the fact that history is just not on their side. So that's why I prefer Tyjae Spears to be a breakout running back, even with Tony Pollard still there in this Tennessee offense. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to take every single guy heading into 2025 that fit the breakout criteria right here. And it's 19 total running backs. So as you can see here, you can find both Tyjae Spears and Tyrone Tracy Jr. in this particular breakout category here. And they're two guys that I have lots of confidence in myself. Because again, with Tyjae Spears, this is a guy who not only fit the league-winning running backs category that I did a couple of weeks ago, this is also a guy in his 24 age season in fantasy football. So he's well within the limits here of fantasy breakouts at the running back position. And again, with Tony Pollard, I just don't have too much faith of him coming back and being this really explosive back all of a sudden again. Tyjae Spears actually was really, really good the back half of fantasy football in 2024, and I believe that will carry over into 2025. That's a reason why I think Tyjae Spears, with a new rookie quarterback, not only gets a bump up in offensive production as a whole for the Titans, but also is just the better running back. This is a Bucky Irving / Rachaad White situation that we are looking at here with Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard, in my opinion. This is one of my favorite breakout / potential league-winning running back drafts that I have made in every single draft of fantasy football at this point. He's one of my favorites to get. Tyrone Tracy Jr., I'm really growing on him as well. Now, I want to start out by saying this. In the league-winning running backs video I did a couple of weeks ago, I actually was candid about how I really like Cam Skattebo. Coming out of college, I was big on Cam Scatterbo before he got drafted to the Giants. So as soon as he goes to the Giants on draft day, I was not particularly thrilled as a Tyrone Tracy Jr. owner in Dynasty. But the fact of the matter is that Tyrone Tracy Jr., even though the age is not particularly fitting the eye, at 25 years old, only in his second season, he has a lot of qualities that I like. Because again, he fit the unsuspecting league-winning running backs category to a freaking T. And number two, everybody's overlooking him right now. And in every single draft, everyone is drafting Cam Scatterbo over Tyrone Tracy Jr. These guys, Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Tyjae Spears, are at least several picks behind their particular other running back in their backfield as far as ADP goes in Underdog. So yes, people are overlooking these potential breakouts right here. And I think that they have enormous upside for your fantasy football team if even one of these guys hit. Now, the other two guys I want to bring into the fold here because, again, it's a continuation of the unsuspecting league-winning running backs video. It's Jaylen Warren and Trey Benson. You can also see that these guys also fit the category as well. Trey Benson is one of my favorite picks right now in Underdog drafts. Not only is he dropping right now in Underdog drafts, he's my most drafted player before he started dropping. I love Trey Benson. Look, you have to think of a couple different things with Trey. Trey Benson is heading into his second season after a season that a lot of people found disappointing for a rookie running back, and a lot of people had this narrative going of he's just not that good of a player. And listen, if you look at it for the first half of the season on a per touch basis, he wasn't very good. But then if you look at the back half of the season, he completely changed, and things started really clicking with him as a running back. So yes, I believe Trey Benson comes into this year completely better as a player. And James Conner, even though they did sign him to a new contract in 2024, it's also a situation where I just look at the guy is really old and the guy has not exactly had the cleanest bill of health during his career as an NFL running back. This guy has had multiple lower body injuries and multiple shoulder injuries as well. So yes, I think Trey Benson could easily become the number one running back in Arizona by week 10. I think it's very, very possible. And again, he's being severely overlooked. This guy is going several rounds after James Conner. Like, it's ridiculous, actually, if you look at these two guys' price on Underdog. The more affordable guy by far is Trey Benson. That's what's led me to barely drafting James Conner at all and drafting a ton of Trey Benson. I've drafted the crap out of Trey Benson because I believe he has true breakout running back potential, not only because he fit this criteria here, but because I believe in him as a player as well. And then with Jaylen Warren here, Jaylen Warren is not exactly my favorite running back in the list. I'm not going to tell you that Jaylen Warren, from a talent perspective, is my guy. Jaylen Warren, I have been watching the Steelers, though, and it got me really thinking, right? So the first video, he fit the unsuspected league-winning running backs criteria by a lot. Like, every single metric he was hitting right there. And he has a rookie running back, Caleb Johnson, who is being completely fawned over in the fantasy community right now. And people are drafting him several rounds higher than Jaylen Warren, again, as well in Underdog drafts right now. So the price here for Jaylen Warren is really, really cheap. Now, the only thing that Jaylen Warren I don't love about him is 26 years old is the season that he's heading into, and he'll actually be 27 by November. So not exactly great age metrics right here. But again, I've been watching this team for years, and what I've consistently seen from this Pittsburgh Steelers team is that they are not a team that is super welcoming of rookies. And what I mean by that is they don't typically let their rookies play right away. Now, in the case of Najee Harris was a first-round running back. Le'Veon Bell, several years ago, about a decade ago at this point, was a second-round running back. Caleb Johnson, third-round running back. Last third-round running back they had that worked out, James Conner, didn't see the field until a couple of years after they drafted him. Jaylen Warren's going to get a lot of targets, man. If you add that on top of the fact that Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback who is not exactly mobile these days, gave Breece Hall 5 targets per game last year, Jaylen Warren's going to be a receiving back that has plenty of upside, especially on a third down percentage basis. This is a third down running back with legitimate opportunity as a potential between the 20s carrier as well. I think Jaylen Warren is well worth the price here. And just in a couple of drafts, even if that's all you take him, I think has significant breakout potential, again, that are being completely overlooked right now. Now, the next guy that I want to get into here is going to be Jaylen Wright. Now, Jaylen Wright, last year, I was a lot bigger on him. He actually fit last year's breakout running back criteria because Raheem Mostert was leaving the building, so therefore there was opportunity that was opening up for Jaylen Wright. So Jaylen Wright, obviously last year was like a disaster. Like, he looked so bad. He did not look good on a per-touch basis. It just didn't look very good. He was a 21-year-old rookie, meaning this year he will be 22 years old. Now, Jaylen Warren, again, I do not prefer him over guys like Travion Henderson on this list, who you can see highlighted in green. I even prefer R.J. Harvey over him. Ash Genty is a no-brainer. Amarian Hampton, I think, is a no-brainer as well. I think there's a lot of guys on this list that I would much rather target than Jaylen Wright. But the thing about Jaylen Wright that's actually got me wondering if maybe there's a potential here is not even just too long ago, guys. Think back to when Raheem Mostert was a breakout. You know who else did really well that year too? Devon Achane. That meant that they loved that two running back system, and it worked for them so well. Now, obviously, Jaylen Wright is going to have to prove the Miami Dolphins that he could be that Raheem Mostert from 2023 to Devon Achane. But in the chance that Miami wants to go back to that two running back system, take a little pressure off Devon Achane from handling everything in the backfield, I think Jaylen Wright has tons of breakout upside to be a potential top 15 or top 20 running back at the very minimum if all things hit correctly. So yes, I do like Jaylen Wright as a potential breakout running back because he fits the criteria, number one, and number two, I did like the prospect coming out of college. So you put him in this Miami backfield that wants to run the ball with two running backs here with Devon Achane's undersized stature. I think Jaylen Wright has plenty of upside. And the last guy that I want to go through here is going to be Jordan Mason. Now, Jordan Mason is joining a new team, the Minnesota Vikings here. He's 26 years old. So again, he doesn't exactly fit the age category super well. I like Jordan Mason though, because Jordan Mason is actually one of my most drafted running backs right now in Underdog, because this Minnesota Vikings backfield is very interesting in my opinion. So I've gone over a bunch of why I don't believe that J.J. McCarthy is going to be this great quarterback in the NFL, because he just was never asked to throw more than 20 times a game in college. People could debate me all day on that. The bottom line is he was not. So things are about to change for him in a big way in the NFL. And I don't think he's going to be able to handle it. So Jordan Mason, there's a reason they went out and traded for this guy. Not only traded for him, they also signed him to a new deal in 2025 as soon as they got the guy. Now, they also signed Aaron Jones. I'm not going to argue with you on that. It appears they want Aaron Jones in their long-term plans. But I think it's been very clear over the last 2 years in particular that Aaron Jones is best when he is utilized as a 15 touch per game type of guy. So that obviously is going to leave at least 10 opportunities here for a different running back. And Jordan Mason is a guy I actually believe can overtake Aaron Jones as the better running back in Minnesota's system. So he also, if you actually do things in reverse, he fits the league-winning running back criteria actually to a T. Again, if the research was reversed. The first half of his season last year, I think a lot of people will remember it. The guy was like a top 5 running back in fantasy football. He was electric for the San Francisco 49ers while Christian McCaffrey was injured and out. So if you just flip things, he was actually a potential league-winning running back, and he would have fit the criteria. But don't blame him for not being as good in the back half of the season because of his play. He was injured. Now, you could blame him for injury, whatever. All I'm telling you is that it wasn't based on bad play. It was based on injuries and the fact that Isaac Guerendo was coming into the fold. They were trying to bring back Christian McCaffrey. By the time Jordan Mason actually got healthy, all of his opportunities just kind of dried up in San Francisco. So he gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings here. This guy we know, based on last year, has the potential to be a top 5, top 10 running back in fantasy football. So he goes to a really good offensive line, better than San Francisco's, and just as good of an offensive mind with Kevin O'Connell. I like Jordan Mason a lot. I'm going to continue drafting him. And again, he fits the breakout running back criteria. So he's going to be in my list of guys when I see tons of opportunity there, which is 100% there in Minnesota. So let me know which breakout running back that you find has a lot of potential in 2025. And if you want to see the top 30 running back rankings for 2025 fantasy football, click on this video right here.